You would think a woman who had everything, power, money, influence, would never cry over love. But Elizabeth Carter, the untouchable CEO of a billion-dollar tech company in New York, had spent too many nights alone in her penthouse, clutching a glass of wine like it was the only thing holding her together. And the cruel irony? She had once promised herself she'd never be this vulnerable again. Then came Lily. It was a rainy Tuesday when Elizabeth's life shifted. She had just stepped out of a board meeting, her mind still tangled with numbers and strategies, when she noticed the young woman in the lobby cafe. Lily was laughing at something on her phone, sunlight practically breaking through the storm outside just to find her. Elizabeth didn't believe in fate, but the way her gaze refused to leave that girl made her question everything she had built walls against. Elizabeth was 32, brilliant but broken. 3 years ago, a betrayal had left her heart in ruins, her fiancé walking out on her the night before their wedding, leaving nothing but a note that read, "I can't live in your shadow anymore." Since then, Elizabeth had buried herself in work, erecting an empire of steel around her heart. Lily, on the other hand, was only 22, an art student juggling coffee shop shifts and gallery dreams. Her world was messy, colorful, alive. She had no idea who Elizabeth Carter was when their eyes met across the cafe. To her, the tall, poised woman in a tailored black suit was just another stranger escaping the rain. But when Elizabeth ordered a cappuccino and their hands brushed briefly at the counter, Lily felt a spark so fierce it startled her. Elizabeth tried to dismiss it. Attraction was dangerous. Emotions were liabilities. But that night, for the first time in years, she replayed a smile in her mind instead of quarterly reports. Days turned into weeks. Elizabeth found excuses ridiculous. Onesto stopped by the cafe where Lily worked. At first, she convinced herself it was about convenience. Then, as Lily began remembering her order, teasing her about always being in a rush, and even sketching her secretly during quiet afternoons, Elizabeth realized she was losing her grip on the walls she had fought so hard to keep intact. Still, fear was louder than desire. One evening, when Lily gently asked why Elizabeth always looked so lonely even in her most perfect suit, Elizabeth snapped. "You don't know me," she said, her voice colder than she meant it to be. Lily flinched, but she didn't retreat. Instead, she met Elizabeth's icy stare with quiet defiance. "No," Lily said softly. "But I want to." That single sentence cracked Elizabeth open in ways she couldn't control. But loving someone like Elizabeth wasn't easy. The tabloids eventually caught sight of them together, twisting their bond into headlines about a reckless CEO entangled with a younger woman. Elizabeth's board of directors whispered, investors grew restless, and her ex-fiancé reappeared suddenly, begging for another chance. It was chaos, the kind Elizabeth thrived on in business but dreaded in her heart. For Lily, it was painful watching Elizabeth retreat behind her walls again. She wanted to fight, but she also feared being consumed by the older woman's complicated world. For every tender moment, the stolen kisses in Elizabeth's private office, the late-night talks about dreams and fears, there was also the crushing weight of doubt. The breaking point came one night when Elizabeth, under pressure from the board, told Lily they needed to stop seeing each other. Her words were sharp, but her eyes betrayed devastation. Lily left without looking back, tears streaming down her face as she whispered, "I believed in us even when you didn't." Elizabeth returned to her empty penthouse, the city lights mocking her through the glass. For the first time, she admitted to herself that she was terrified not of loving Lily, but of losing her. And in that moment of clarity, Elizabeth realized she had been fighting the wrong battles all along. Elizabeth wasn't used to regret. In the boardroom, hesitation meant weakness, and weakness was something she had never allowed herself. But in the silence of her penthouse, regret was all she had. Every glass of untouched wine, every unsent text to Lily, became a reminder of the cowardice she despised in herself. Meanwhile, Lily returned to her tiny apartment in Brooklyn, curling up on the couch with her sketchbook as though drawing could mend the hole in her chest. She replayed every laugh they had shared, every fleeting touch, every time Elizabeth had looked at her like she was more than just a barista with messy hair and unfinished dreams. She wanted to hate Elizabeth for pushing her away, but the truth was simple. She loved her. And love, no matter how painful, refused to vanish overnight. Weeks passed, and the city moved on as though nothing had happened. But Elizabeth didn't. She found herself staring at the door of the cafe every morning, waiting for courage to walk inside. She would rehearse apologies in her head, only to drown them in work once more. It wasn't until her company prepared for its annual gala event, meant to showcase power and perfection, that Elizabeth realized what was missing wasn't profit or prestige. It was Lily. Without her, all the victories were hollow. That night, as cameras flashed and investors circled, Elizabeth looked flawless in her black evening gown. But beneath the surface, she was trembling. She gave her speech, spoke about innovation, resilience, the future of technology, but every word felt meaningless. Then, in a moment of reckless clarity, she set aside the script. "This company has been my shield," she confessed to the stunned crowd. "For years I thought success would protect me from heartbreak. But tonight, standing here, I realize the truth. No empire is worth building if you have no one to share it with." The room fell silent. Elizabeth felt the weight of her confession settle over her. And then, like destiny refusing to be ignored, she saw Lily. She hadn't expected her to come, but there she was, standing near the back, wearing a simple dress that made her look luminous. Elizabeth's heart pounded as she stepped down from the stage. She didn't care about the whispers, the cameras, the shocked expressions of her board members. All she cared about was reaching Lily. When she finally stood before her, Elizabeth's voice cracked. "I was a coward. I pushed you away because I was terrified of losing you. But Lily, I already lost myself when you walked out that night." Lily's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "You think words can fix everything?" she asked, her tone trembling between anger and longing. "No," Elizabeth admitted, taking a shaky breath. "But love can. If you'll let me prove it." For a heartbeat, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then Lily reached forward, her fingers grazing Elizabeth's hand, soft but deliberate. "You broke my heart," she whispered. "But you're the only one who knows how to put it back together." The kiss that followed wasn't gentle. It was desperate, raw, a clash of all the pain and longing they had bottled up. And as flashes erupted from cameras around them, neither woman cared. For the first time in years, Elizabeth wasn't performing for anyone. She was simply living, fully and unapologetically. From that night on, everything changed. Elizabeth faced battles against tabloids, against board members who doubted her choices, even against her own lingering fears. But Lily was there through it all, steady and brave in her quiet way. She reminded Elizabeth that vulnerability wasn't weakness, but strength in its truest form. And Elizabeth in turn showed Lily that her art, her dreams, and her love were powerful enough to move mountains. They learned to fight not against each other but for each other. Some nights were still hard, their age gap sparked judgment, and Elizabeth's past scars sometimes resurfaced. But every challenge only deepened their bond. One evening, months later, Lily found herself once again sketching Elizabeth in the soft glow of their shared apartment. Elizabeth sat at the piano, a rare smile curving her lips as she played a hesitant melody she hadn't touched in years. Lily put down her pencil and crossed the room, wrapping her arms around the woman who had once been unreachable. "Do you realize?" Lily murmured against her shoulder. "You've become the reason I believe love is worth every risk?" Elizabeth turned, cupping Lily's face with tenderness that was no longer restrained. "And you've become the reason I believe in myself again." Outside, the city pulsed with life, indifferent to their small moment of peace. But inside, their world was whole. They didn't need grand declarations or perfect endings. They only needed each other, the young woman who loved fiercely, and the CEO who finally let herself be loved. And in that fragile, beautiful truth, they found their forever. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.